Hello, welcome back to the Wolf Den. We are live. It's been too long. Um, as I mentioned in my YouTube video, but I'll go ahead and mention here. Um, I had things come up in my life. Not all of them negative, some of them positive, but they were a distraction, so I wasn't able to go live. I still read, I just really couldn't make videos because of what was going on. Um, I on YouTube earlier today, I recapped chapters 13 to 22 and said I was going to go live tonight to read 23, the end. And then when I hopped on here and I was getting prepared, I scrolled down to see how many verses were in chapter 23. Turns out there's 24 chapters. Um, excuse me, I don't know why that happens. I was completely fine right before I started making this. Anyways, saw that there were 24. I thought there were 23, but oh well, that's fine. More gospel to read. But let's go ahead and jump into Luke 23. Just for a quick recap, in chapter 22, Jesus has been betrayed by Judas, called Iscariot. He's been handed over to the chief priest, arrested, and he was beaten. It doesn't say like all night, but the way that it's presented is he's beaten, and then like the sun comes up. So I don't know if he's like beat all night or just a couple hours, whatever. Doesn't matter. He got beat while in jail. And then so now this is 23 picks up right where that left off. Then the whole company of them arose and brought him before Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man misleading our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ, a king." And Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered them, "You have said so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no guilt in this man." But they were urgent, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee even to this place." Jesus before Herod. When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean, and when he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at the time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him, because he had heard about him, and was hoping to see some sign done by him. So he questioned him at some length, but he made no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently, I assume, accusing him, and Herod with his soldiers treating him with contempt and mocking him. Then, arraying him in splendid clothing, he sent him back to Pilate. And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other for that very day. For both this they had been at enmity with another. I hope I said that right. They had been at enmity with each other. Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was misleading the people, and after examining him before you, behold, I do not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Look, nothing deserving death has been done by him. I will therefore punish and release him." But they all cried out together, "Away with this man, and release us to and release to us Barnabas." I Bar Bar Barnabas. I think I said that right. A man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection started in the city, and for murder. Pilate addressed them once more, desiring them to release Jesus. But they kept shouting, "Crucify, crucify him." A third time he said to them, Why? What evil has he done? I found him in no guilt. I found him in no guilt deserving death. I will therefore punish and release him. But they were urgent, demanding with loud cries that he should be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate decided that their demand should be granted. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, and from whom they asked, but he delivered Jesus over to their will, the crucifixion. And as they led him away, they seized one Simon of Cyrene, I'm not sure, who was coming in from the country, and laid on him the cross to carry it behind Jesus. And they 27. And there followed him a great multitude of the people and of women who were mourning and lamenting for him. But turning to them, Jesus said, Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming when they will say, Blessed are the barren and the wombs that never bore and the breasts that never nursed. Then they will begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills, Cover us. For if they do these things when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry? Two others who were criminals were laid away to be put to death with him. And when they came to the place that is called the Skull, there they crucified him and the criminals, on the right, one on his right and one on his left. And Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they cast lots to divide his garments, and the people stood by watching. But the ruler scoffed at him, saying, He saved others, let him save himself, if he is the Christ of God, his chosen one. The soldiers also mocked him, coming up and offering him sour wine, and saying, If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself. There was also an inscription over him, This is the King of the Jews. There was also an inscription over him, This is the King of the Jews. One of the criminals who were hanged railed at him, saying, Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us. But the other rebuked him, saying, Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we are receiving the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong. And he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And he said to him, Truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. The death of Jesus. It was now about the 6th hour, and there was a darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour, while the while the sun's light failed, and the curtains of the temple were torn in two. Then Jesus, calling out with a loud voice, said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And having said this, he breathed his last. Now when the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God, saying, Certainly this man was innocent. And all the crowds that had assembled for the spectacle, when they saw what had taken place, returned home, beating their breast. And all his acquaintances and the woman who had followed him from Galilee stood at a distance watching these things. Jesus is buried. Now there was a man named Joseph from the Jewish town of Arimathea. He was a member of the council, a good and righteous man. He who had not consented to their decision and action, and he was looking for the kingdom of God. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then he took it down and wrapped it in a linen shroud and laid him in a tomb cut in stone, where no one had ever been lain. It was the day of preparation, and the Sabbath was beginning. The woman who had come with him from Galilee followed and saw the tomb and how his body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and ointments. On the Sabbath they rested, according to the commandment. So there's a couple things I want to talk about in this story, and especially since Luke didn't go very detailed into the crucifixion. Um, I do apologize if you're a little sensitive. I will try not to get into very graphic detail, but I'm gonna kind of explain the process of crucifixion, not in its entirety, but there's just some things um, that Luke just didn't mention. One thing that I want to talk about because it bothers me so much. I've heard this said often, and to me, it means like you don't actually read the Bible and you're just repeating a talking point so that you can talk. And that is when they say, oh, well, the white people are the one that killed Jesus, right? You might have heard that. I know I have heard it several times. Oh, white people are the ones that killed Jesus. The white people are evil. But you heard me read it. Jesus was tried by Herod and by Pilate, two different white men. They were Romans, and they both said that we have no reason to kill him. He's not guilty. But the crowd of the Jews that were there, the crowd was Jews. So they were Jewish people, and they were the ones calling for crucifixion. Um, Now, there's something that Luke kind of skips over. You see, Pilate, what he tells the crowd of Jews is, well, okay, it's the Passover. According to your tradition, we allow one criminal out of jail to be returned to you. Do you want Jesus or Barabbas? Actually, I think I said Barnabas earlier. It's Barabbas. Do you want him? And the Jews that were there chose Barabbas. And Barabbas was in prison for insurrection and murder. Jesus was in jail for nothing. They lied because they even said that I think it's like one of the first charges they bring upon him is that he's saying not to pay taxes to Caesar. But if we go back to chapter 22, when he's asked about that, about paying money to Caesar, he asked, hey, whose face is on the coin? And they said Caesar's. He's like, great, give to Caesar's what is Caesar's. So he told them to pay their taxes, and then they lied to Herod and Pilate saying, no, he told us not to do that, right? Now, the evil white people in this story had no reason to kill Jesus. They didn't want to. The Pilate even tries 3 times to not kill Jesus. But the crowd of Jews that were there kept getting stirred up and said, no, crucify him. So Pilate gave in to the pressure. Now there's a little bit more like backstory pressure of Pilate was kind of in the hot seat when it came to the Caesar. He could have lost his position. So there's like a political influence and the peer pressure influence is like he gave in. But I don't need to go into that. Now, the thing about the crucifixion, if you don't know, um, part of it is you get beat pretty severely. It's not like nowadays when you get a lethal injection, you're fed, clothed, whatever, then you walk and then they like let you say your last words, they inject whatever chemicals into you. They actually the first injection is just to like knock you out, not like death, but just like unconscious, and then they put the lethal injection. That's today's executions. The crucifixion is you're getting beat, you're getting whipped. It even the soldiers even go so far as to tugging and ripping out Jesus's beard. He's flogged, which is just like beaten with canes. And that's why they called this Simon of Cyrene, I'm not sure, who was coming in from the country. They asked him to carry Jesus's cross because Jesus was so badly beaten that he couldn't carry it himself. Part of the crucifixion is you carried that cross that you were going to be hung on. That was part of it. You carried it yourself, your tool of execution. But Jesus was so badly beaten that he couldn't do it, so they had this other guy carry it for him. Um, so anyway, what my point was about the whole evil white people thing, that they're the ones that killed Jesus. They didn't want to. They had no reason to. They didn't want to, and then they moved on because of political and peer pressure. That's all I got to say about that. Moving on, I was talking about crucifixion and everything. Um, Jesus is put onto the cross. He's being executed. Now, the thing about crucifixion is you're suffocating to death. Basically, that's how you die. You're hung in such a way that your body can't naturally get air. You may or may not have seen it, depending on the types of crosses that you've seen that these were used in crucifixion. They have like a little tiny platform, and that is your feet rest on there, and you just kind of push up and you elevate your body, and that's how you get your oxygen. um, and so it took Jesus 9 hours to suffocate to death, FYI. um, Now there is something that needs to be talked about, and that's the curtain in the temple was torn. That may not seem, it's like, well, that's just kind of a random occurrence, but what it has to do with is in the temple that was called the holiest of holies. You may have heard that term. Um, and what that is like, it's the part of the temple where like God's essence uh, lives essentially. And so this curtain that they had was this very heavy, thick, lined curtain that was there. It was probably weighed, I probably not even exaggerated, it might have weighed a ton. It was very thick, and that was to like keep the essence of God in the holies of holies. Excuse me. And when Jesus died, that thing tore open and fell apart. Kind of crazy. Now, also, I find it interesting that everybody's mocking him. You know, not I don't find that part interesting, but what I find interesting about everybody mocking him is the other criminal who is being crucified with him. He's mocking him too. And if you remember what I just said about crucifixion, you have to lift yourself up to get breath. So this criminal is lifting himself up to get oxygen, then to mock Jesus. Like that's commitment to mocking him. That's crazy. Um, Now, um, the death of Jesus. Now, I used to get sad when I read this. I mean, even if you don't think that like Jesus was God, if you believe that he was a real person and like how gruesome a death, a crucifixion is by the Romans, like even if you don't believe he's God, like you could still feel some compassion for like that. Like that's a horrible, horrible, horrible death. But I don't get sad anymore because this was put into a different light. And in fact, I wish I had it with me, but I don't. Um, there's something called the Roman Triumphus. And if you're a history buff, you may know what that is. That is the ceremony in which a new Caesar is crowned Caesar. Oh man, I wish I had it pulled up. I don't want to go looking for it. I have no idea where it is. But the ceremony that the new Caesar takes to be crowned Caesar of Rome and the death of Jesus are beat for beat identical. Essentially, through Jesus' death, he is crowned king of Rome. He's kind of like, he goes through the same ceremony. It's wild. And so, like, now I no longer um, get sad when I read this because I have that in mind and I'm like, he did it again. Just crazy. Also, to me, I find it slightly funny that Jesus is crucified at the hands of the Romans. I don't find that part funny. But what I find funny is later the Romans became Catholic and the Roman Catholic Church is in there, is in Rome, and that's like where you get the Pope and everything. And it's like they're the ones that killed Jesus. That's like him going, I got you from the grave. You ain't never going to get me back type deal. Slightly funny to me, maybe not to everybody. Um, but I don't know if there was anything else I wanted to talk about. I know after reading this, Luke's account isn't very detailed on the crucifixion. Um, oh, yes, I did want to talk about one other thing. When it talks about, where'd it go? I lost it. Well, it doesn't matter. It talks about the centurion. Oh, it's right here. He praised God. Certainly, this man was innocent. That's in this version. I've read it in a different way where the centurion saw what took place. He praised God, saying, certainly this man was the Son of God. And that is a very powerful statement for this Roman centurion to make because of what I just talked about in the Roman Triumphus. Because when the Caesar is being crowned, part of it is they're proving the Caesar has to prove that they are the Son of God. And a centurion would say that out loud, this man is the Son of God. And this centurion says that at Jesus' death. If that doesn't blow your mind, I don't know what will. Um, but that is everything I think I wanted to talk about. Um, yeah, I we're gonna do chapter 24 tomorrow. But today is the 25th, so we have 17 more days of Lent and one more chapter to read, and then I then still have 16 days. So what we're gonna do is starting Monday, we'll jump into the book of Mark. Excuse me, because I'm supposed to read the gospel and Mark. Gosh, I don't know why that happens. Mark is another gospel, and that one's only 16 chapters. 16 days, 16 chapters. Let's make it happen, Captain. I'm the Wolf, and I look forward to howling with you again next time.